Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Hands-On with Vercel AI SDK with Generative UI. My name is Yukti Dwivedi, and I work as a growth analyst at SingleStore. And it's my pleasure to be your moderator today. One of my main jobs at SingleStore is to organize weekly AI webinars. We organize 2 webinars per week, demonstrating AI and data use cases with new tools and technologies. I will post about our upcoming webinars every week. So if these topics are interesting to you, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn to stay in the loop. Also, I would love to hear some feedback or ideas or any topic you would love to see in future sessions. So speaking of future sessions, we actually have some great sessions coming up on Wednesday. We'll be presenting on the 24th. It's called Build AI Apps and Agents in Minutes with PyData and SingleStore, where you can see a live demo on how to leverage SingleStore and PyData to build AI apps super fast. If this topic sounds interesting to you, please RSVP right now. And on Friday, the 26th, we have Gemini 1.5 Pro, which is native audio file API JSON mode and 1 million context. Okay, so coming back to today's topic, you are welcome to participate in discussion throughout the session using the Zoom Q&A button at the bottom of your console. We have an internal mission to try to answer all the questions that we get, even if that means following up with folks afterwards via email. Although this has gotten increasingly difficult over time, because we have thousands of registrants, and for each webinar, we actually have to follow up every time. But we're up to the challenge, so ask away, don't hesitate. But make sure you have logged into the Zoom account with your actual name and email address, because we won't be taking any anonymous questions. We'd love to try today's technology. Anyone who tries it today will be entered to win either brand new AirPods or Meta's new Ray-Ban LLM glasses. It's absolutely your choice. Simply click this link that I'll be putting in the chat to enter the raffle. You may know that SingleStore has had a free trial offers for many years, but in the past few weeks, we have also announced a free share tier, which we'll talk about a bit later today. So let me announce our speakers today. We have the real star of the show, Ayush Pai. He's a computer science graduate at Georgia Tech, and we've originally found him online after he created a viral AI basketball referee demo. Since then, we have partnered with him on various projects that demonstrate the power of SingleStore DB for AI use cases. So let's get things started with a quick overview of some of the tools and technologies we'll be using today to build AI-powered applications to create dynamic user interfaces. Then we can jump onto the demo. Ayush, the floor is yours now. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Seem to be on mute.
Ayush, I think you're on mute.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying I was going to hand it off to Akmal for just a quick introduction for SingleStore.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, sir. If you keep the slide deck, I think it'll be easier then. I think there's only 2 slides there. Okay, so just a couple of quick words about the company and the product. So as you can see along the timeline there, on the left-hand side, 2011, founded as MemSQL. Okay, so the company and the product used to be called MemSQL, very much focused around in-memory OLTP processing, and gradually over time, I think if you just press the key there, Ayush, that's it, brilliant. So you can see that across the period of time, both the revenue, which really started to grow significantly between 2017 and 2018, as you can see, and we are now a $100 million ARR, annual recurring revenue company. And in terms of customers as well, started to grow there roughly mid-2019, so over 350 global customers now. And along the bottom, you can see significant names there in terms of investors, well-known brands globally. Next slide, please, Ayush. Okay, so we talked just a moment ago about it being focused on OLTP. In fact, analytics capability was added not so long ago, a couple of years back, and we have this concept of universal storage now. So the ability to do both types of processing using a single table type. some of the characteristics: fast ingest, CDC, okay, change data capture. So you can see a variety of technologies there on the left-hand side: streaming data, Kafka, and transformation from Spark. So last week, for example, I did 2 webinars, one covering Kafka, which a topic which we've done before, and Spark, which we kind of touched on a little bit in the past, but haven't given it some dedicated time, and then sort of a Hadoop and HDFS. And then the animation there on the left-hand side, you can see, is really demonstrating the ingest pipelines, as we saw last week. We run on all major cloud platforms: AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure in the Western world. And I think Ayush will probably be using AWS, if I'm not mistaken. We are on-prem as well. Okay, so you can actually run the technology on your own hardware, bare metal, or in the cloud if you wish to do so. That's entirely possible too. And in terms of the capabilities, we really manage a variety of different data types. So relational is pretty much where the technology came from, but geospatial, time series, key value, JSON. Time series I touched on a little bit last week in the Kafka event that we did, where I utilized some a feed that was coming in and being able to do some analytics and analysis of that using both time series features built into the product, as well as natural language processing using LangChain and OpenAI. Vectors, of course, the hot topic of the day, as you can see as well, last but not least, in terms of the stored data types. I think Ayush may well be using some of those capabilities today. And then just to wrap up, then you can see the applications: real-time decisions, IoT, dynamic experiences, and then we've got the real-time analytics. Okay, so dashboards. So whatever is your favorite technology, Tableau, for example. I use Metabase. I've mentioned that before many times. Just a jar file, very easy to utilize, create charts and pie charts and graphs in a matter of minutes, and ad hoc queries built into the cloud platform as well. So if you sign up for the link that Yukti shared and has posted into the chat there, literally within 1 minute, you can sign up and you can be entered into the draw. And that's really it, the architectural overview. And I'll step down now and hand over to Ayush to take over from here. So I'll be in the Q&A. Okay, so if you have questions, we've got both myself and Matt and Yukti available to help and assist with those today. Over to you, Ayush.
Awesome. Thank you, Akmal and Yukti, for that great introduction. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ayush Pai, and I'm a computer science student at Georgia Tech. And it's really great to have you all here for a discussion on the Vercel AI SDK, with a focus on the generative user interfaces, right? And before like all these presentations, I always like to get like a brief introductions into the technologies that we're using, especially AI and Gen AI. So let's get started with that. So AI is kind of like a discipline within computer science that's aimed at, building machines capable of performing tasks that typically require a lot of human intelligence. At its foundation, AI enables systems to learn from data, reason out decisions, and apply knowledge, often outstripping, human performance in a lot of specific areas, right? So key to these capabilities are technologies such as machine learning, which allows computers to improve from experience in training data, natural language processing that helps machines comprehend and communicate in human language, and computer vision, which equips them to interpret visual data. And last field is robotics, which really combines elements to interact in the physical world. As AI continues to advance, it's not only revolutionizing industries across the board, but also posing new challenges and raising ethical questions. And in our discussion today, we'll delve into how AI is being integrated into user interfaces through the Vercel AI SDK. And we'll be enhancing interactivity and personalization in your websites, in your designs, using this AI technology that can automatically generate user interfaces based on this AI technology. So generative AI kind of represents a significant leap in the field of artificial intelligence, right? It's an area focused on the creation of new content, which could just be something from, text and images to audios and other forms. And obviously today we'll be focusing specifically on generative AI that generates user interfaces that users can directly interact with on websites. And it's not just replication, right? It's about machines exhibiting a level of creativity that we've traditionally considered uniquely human. And at the heart of this technology, there's kind of these three models that we like to talk about. The generative adversarial networks, or GANs. We also have transformer models, and we have variational autoencoders. And these are kind of the three models that have really kind of transformed this technology and kind of gotten us to this generative AI technology today. And kind of what this means in practice, right? So generative AI enables a multitude of applications. We're talking about, automating content generation, generating synthetic data sets for further AI training, making tailored, media experiences and to personalized tastes, and all these different technologies. But today, yeah, as we focus further on the Vercel AI SDK, we'll kind of see how these concepts directly apply to making dynamic generative user interfaces based on conversations users are having with a chatbot, or simple scenarios where, for example, you want to have buttons where they can see their schedule. You can have like custom user interfaces that directly integrate with their stock portfolio, stuff like that. You can do directly with this type of technology. Before getting into that, let's kind of go over these three models. A very interesting technology here that kind of are the base of this technology, right? So we have these GANs, which are particularly interesting in the AI space. Basically, a GAN consists of two neural networks, the generator and the discriminator, and they're trained simultaneously through this adversarial process. So what happens here is the generator creates, which essentially allows it to produce images so convincing that it could pass as real. And the discriminator evaluates, discerning between the generator's fakes and actual images. And essentially what this is doing, it is adversarial training, right? It allows the ants to improve over time and become increasingly proficient at generating high fidelity outputs, and essentially creating as real images as possible. And the use cases for this technology are very impactful, right? They're technology behind, more realistic textures in video games, creating more realistic, images when you're doing image generation. And in our context, understanding GANs is key when working with Vercel AI SDK. They can be used to employ real-time UI elements to adapt to the user's need in real time. And this kind of responsiveness is kind of like the forefront of what you need for this modern UI design you see on a lot of these new adaptive websites. So the next kind of model we're going to talk about here is the transformer model. And this is one of the most popular models of the last, year or two. It's kind of been like the basis of all these technologies behind GPT, all these large language models that have been really a game changer in the field of machine learning and natural language processing. So transformers rely on a mechanism called self-attention. This essentially allows them to process input data as a text in a non-sequential manner. And essentially what they have to do is they can pay more attention to certain parts of the data that are more relevant at the task at hand. And kind of like what this model actually does, and the implications are kind of significant, right? It can do language translation, it can do text summarization, it can take these long documents and give them concise summaries. You can you've used GPT and ChatGPT, stuff like that, right? You've seen all the capabilities, and the transformer model is kind of like what's behind this actual technology. In the case of the Vercel AI SDK, though, the transformer models really open up possibilities for creating interfaces that users can directly interact with. And kind of like the demo I'll show you guys today is where a user is directly interacting with a chatbot, and they are, what's being returned is not just text, but what's being returned is actual UI elements that they can directly interact with. You've used ChatGPT, and what the response is usually just large blobs of text. But the great thing about this Vercel AI SDK is, instead of that, you can directly respond with React elements, or something like that, where the users can directly interact with that. And like kind of like the last model here is the variational autoencoders. And they're kind of a different breed within the machine learning landscape. Essentially, they're powerful algorithms that use deep learning techniques to compress input data, such as images, into smaller encoded representations. And essentially, in practical terms, they're incredibly versatile. They use in anomaly detection. They can identify data points that don't conform to like a learned distribution. They're very particularly useful in fields like finance or security. They're instrumental in image denoising, clearing up images from noises and noise from images. And in the pharmaceutical industry, they're used for drug recovery. And there's a lot of different use cases, but especially if we're talking about the Vercel AI SDK, they kind of offer a pathway to creating more sophisticated and adaptive UI elements that can change dynamically to meet user needs. And all these three models have been used to create this type of technology that we're seeing today. So talking more about the generative user interface, right? If you see this example on the right-hand side of your screen, this is kind of like how this type of technology works with Vercel, right? So essentially you would have a function, you would have, some LLM server logic, and essentially it would create this UI based on, you can have like a predefined a React element, and what it can do is based on like the information directly from the LLM, it can fill it in directly and kind of show the user a very interactive experience when so your chatbots that you're integrating into your websites, into your businesses can be a lot more interactive, right? So essentially, like the benefits of this are really manifold. So personalization is really the key to taking next level interactions and improving user engagement. And designing prototypes becomes more agile as the AI rapidly iterates over various design variations based on real-time user data. Can really significantly speed up the design process for a lot of websites and make it a lot easier to integrate, very custom UIs for different users. And we can see this as a, adaptive approach where applied over the spectrum of web design, where websites are evolved to, user input based on chatbots, based on, user interactions. They shape themselves to suit how they're, being used. And the Vercel AI SDK enables developers to kind of harness this power directly in their apps with the SDK, and make the generative UI more than just a possibility. It's really reality you can use today, and we'll kind of show that in the demo. And just a little bit more about the Vercel AI SDK, right? It kind of stands at the forefront of this interactive development. Obviously, you might have seen some demos online of just using ChatGPT saying, hey, can you generate me this element? I've done this in some of my past demos, right? You can use GPT or these large language models. You can say, hey, generate me a React component that does X, Y, and Z. And obviously, it can do like a decent job, but it's never really directly integrated with technology, with your data sets, with your data that you're trying to use. And also it's not it's never like great looking. It's probably some very basic UI elements, nothing crazy. Vercel's technology has been trained specifically for this, and some of the elements that it can create are kind of amazing, right? So the SDK is really robust, designed to work with modern web ecosystems supporting both JavaScript and TypeScript. You can use it with React, you can use it with Next.js, and diving deeper, like the Vercel AI SDK kind of facilitates like the seamless creation of streaming user interfaces. So this means that user can interact directly with the UI. The responses and updates are streamed in real time, much like a conversation. But instead of like if you have that conversation in ChatGPT, it's streaming a UI in real time to interact with. And SDK is engineered to be compatible with various AI service providers, including OpenAI, Anthropic, Hugging Face, and LangChain, among others. And this interoperability allows developers to harness like a wide range of AI models and tools to directly integrate it into their UI for their generative UI technologies here. So in the landscape of user interfaces, right, the concept of streaming UI has really gained momentum, especially with the rise of conversational AI technologies. Platforms like ChatGPT, Claude.ai, Meta.ai, others have really propelled the need for interfaces that can handle like ongoing two-way interactions that are kind of akin to human conversations, right? So unlike traditional blocking UIs that require complete response before any part of it can be displayed to user, streaming UI specifically can show the response data as the first piece available. So if you use ChatGPT or any of these other services, these chatbots, right, once you type in a response and it starts responding to you, it doesn't wait for the whole response to come into the UI. What it does is it streams it one bit at a time, so you can start to see the response while it's still generating the next word. And this is crucial for, maintaining a fluid user experience, particularly when, interfacing with AI that processes natural language in real time. Reduces the perceived latency and keeps the user engaged. And to streamline the development of such interfaces, the Vercel AI SDK has been engineered to do specifically this. There's other platforms like OpenAI, some providers you can use directly that have this technology. But it's a lot easier to use it directly with the Vercel SDK because you can super easily swap between different models and use this type of streaming UI directly into React components. And its architecture allows for efficient handling of streaming data. Ensures developers can implement in real time, have conversational UIs with minimal overhead, and really simplifies the complexity of the under the hood processes, such as managing WebSocket connections or making the implementation of streaming UI is just very straightforward. All you have to just use is call an API call to Vercel, and it directly streams it into a React component for you. And so the other one that was really interesting is the Vercel Generative UI. It's kind of an embodiment of where UI design is kind of heading, particularly with the infusion of AI capabilities, right? So leveraging the Vercel AI SDK, developers can now integrate, conversational AI services, like those offered by GPT, Claude, others directly into user interfaces, transforming these static elements and static text into interactive components. So this integration kind of extends beyond, mere text exchanges that you see in ChatGPT. It's really about incorporating, this AI-driven functionality that can respond to user queries in an actionable UI element. So, for example, on the screen here, when a user kind of types a request for, scheduling meeting, I'd like to get drinks with Max tomorrow evening after studio. What it does here is it actually, the UI can actually proactively offer a calendar component populated with the available slots that are directly connected to their data. And this is like a key here. It's like the direct interaction rather than switching the context or navigating between multiple steps or having a third-party integration with Google Calendar, stuff like that. Users can really directly accomplish tasks within the flow of a conversation. Kind of really streamlines experiences, especially if you're trying to make this generative AI technology more accessible to your customers or on your website. Instead of using multiple third-party services, you can directly integrate it into your chatbot, and directly integrate these UI components that are just streamed with React. And the streamlines the experiences, making the applications not only more intuitive but more efficient as well. So the Vercel generative UI kind of blurs the lines between, conversing with an application and navigating its features, right? So it makes the user journey a lot more smooth, and the application's response is more contextually aware and visually interactive. So just looking about how this generative UI works, right? So we're not just creating interfaces, we're kind of architecting these experiences. So essentially what happens here, this is a basic example of, streaming a text interface, kind of how I was talking about a little bit before, devoid of just, putting just a block of text once it's done loading, right? So essentially it's a very straightforward and powerful technology here. Here's some React code on the screen, and you can see what it does here. We start by importing the necessary modules from AI SDK. We're using OpenAI's offerings, and essentially what we do here, within a few lines of code, we can instantiate the AI. We're using GPT-4, and essentially when invoked, it's going to render the function as part of the SDK and then return a conversational response in real time. And essentially what it's doing is it's going to be returning it and rendering in real time so that it streams it directly to the screen into a React component instead of just waiting for the response to be done. And this is really, this functionality really encapsulates the essence of the generative UI. It's not just about displaying the information, it's about crafting this dialogue. This is a very simple example, though. I want to go to this next example where this is a lot more interesting, right? So this is an example of the Vercel generative UI where we're actually, interfacing AI with real-time data retrieval, which is a feature that's indispensable for providing up-to-date information like weather forecasts and stuff like that. So this example shows how we can enrich a user's interaction with live data, creating a custom UI that not only is informative but also reactive and personalized. And So essentially how these work is I've done a presentation in the past about OpenAI functions and stuff like that. And, this is kind of directly integrating with that, right? So Vercel AI SDK harnesses the potential by, using this new rendering method. And this method allows for specific calls to be mapped to the React server components. And this code snippet right here, it kind of displays how you would, structure such a function. It kind of begins with a user's input, a query about weather, and then triggers the get city weather, which is a tool defined within, SDK or in your server components. And this tool is a, React component that can calls an asynchronous function which pulls live weather data based on the requested city. So essentially what we have here is we have like the pre-generated, UI component that we want to use, but then we can directly integrate it directly into the data based on, the GPT response or whatever AI model you're using here. So these React server components powered by AI kind of really act on the input and fetch relevant data and then render it in real time for the user. And the resulting UI is kind of a seamless integration. So you could just say, what is the weather in SF? And then it responds with like, 47 degrees, or you could give this really cool UI. And you can see the possibilities of this. Obviously, weather is a very simple example, but you can see the possibilities of how this can be very useful for, directly interacting with users instead of just having a plain chatbot. Just learning a little bit more about how the SDK works. So the AI state is one of the main features here. It refers to the JSON structure that encapsulates the context that is required for the large language model to understand and continue the conversation. So this is kind of crucial for chat applications where maintaining the flow of dialogue is kind of key to providing coherent and contextually relevant interactions. So in a technical sense, the AI state, acts as a state management tool, right? Essentially records the dialogue between the user and the AI assistant. It allows the system to preserve the context of the conversation over multiple exchanges. And essentially, what it does is, it kind of gets this context of the conversation and ensures that the AI can reference, previous interactions to inform its current responses. And the provided code kind of shows how the AI state is managed within the Vercel AI SDK environment, right? So what's happening here is the large language model, returns a chunk of text, and the text function is called, and when the content, and then the content is incrementally streamed. And once, only upon, receiving the final content, the AI state is marked as complete. But this AI state, it's getting this text, and it can be streamed, directly to a chat, or it can be streamed directly to your, React components that are dynamically updating as this new data is being generated from the LLM. And yeah, this AI state.done method updates the conversation history with the latest exchange and then readies the state for the next interaction. This is just some of the technical details behind this. So another technical detail here is the UI state. These are the two main states that are using directly with the SDK, just as a primer. So UI state is what we describe as the client-side state in modern web applications. And when we discuss, discussing React and similar frameworks, it's very similar to that. Essentially, it's a snapshot of, the application's user interface at any given moment, right? So essentially, it stores all the details necessary to render the UI on the screen. You should definitely check out the Vercel AI SDK for more details. This is just a quick primer, but much like the familiar useState hook in React, which manages the state. If you used React before, you've seen useState, right? This kind of manages the state. This is UI state, which is manages across the entire application, right? What it's doing is we keep track of the variables such as message IDs and corresponding display components, and then when AI processes and such like processes and Vercel AI SDK comes into play, the UI state kind of becomes a critical part of the architecture and allows for dynamic and responsive UI. In the code snippet, we can see that the UI state is defined and then contains a unique identifiers and display elements, and essentially here it kind of encapsulates both the AI and the UI states. And this orchestration is key to building like a fluid and reactive application. Just a little bit more about the AI core. So we have many different providers here that we can be used, and you can use these different methods here. You generate text, stream text, generate object, and stream object. Obviously, streaming is the best option, and it's very, very seamless with the Vercel AI SDK to stream text directly into a chatbot or stream text directly into your React components. And integrating SingleStore into your Vercel AI application really serves as a robust solution for managing and querying large volumes of data with really high velocity, right? And it's essential for AI-driven applications which require, real-time responses. And by integrating SingleStore, which is a high-performance SQL database, you can really enhance your Vercel's AI application and its ability to interact with, and maintain conversational stay in history, right? So it's not just about storing the text, but it's about, rapid retrieval and, making contextually relevant data, which can be really used to enhance the AI's responses. SingleStore's architecture is really designed to, be used for speed and scale, and makes it an excellent choice for applications that need to use, maintain and fast interactive experience. And, for instance, when a chatbot retrieves a user's previous messages or interactions, or, generates recommendations, SingleStore's ability to perform quick queries and return results in real time is really invaluable in this situation. And in this project, I'm using directly SingleStore within the Vercel AI SDK and the demo. I'm using it on the AWS server, and overall, it really allows for sophisticated operations like, aggregating large data sets and, performing, analytical queries, or even handling transactional workloads, and all these which can be used to enhance the UI components and, all their, additional data, ensuring that the user experience is not only smooth, but also smart and informed with unique data. Just talking a little bit about retrieval augmented generation, how this kind of relates to this technology here, right? So if you're not familiar, RAG is a technique that kind of merges the expansive, knowledge of large language models with like a retrieval mechanism, which essentially augments the generative, capabilities of models like GPT with external data sources. This hybrid model uses, first uses like a retriever to fetch relevant information from a database, such as SingleStore or corpus based on like a lot of the input query. And what it does is it vectorizes the query, searches it through a vector database, which is all these vectors using cosine similarity. And essentially, once the relevant context is retrieved, the RAG system feeds this information into an LLM, and it generates a response that is not only trained from its pre-trained data, but also informed by the specific information pulled from this external data. It's a lot more accurate. It removes hallucinations, and you can have very specific examples of data. For example, if you're making a stock, a stock or portfolio analysis type chatbot for your financial app, you can be pulling data directly from the user's financial data. Or if you're doing something for a budgeting app, or many different examples where you need specific domain knowledge to really enhance the ability of your chatbot here. And how this is relevant for retrieval augmented generation with generative UI is, this can really mark as a significant step in advancing, user interface technology by kind of combining RAG's ability to pull in, user-specific data. You can also like make this very an adaptive nature of the generative UI. We can create an ecosystem that not only like is responsive, but also deeply personalized. For example, you can integrate, these RAG technology into a dynamic, retrieval information such as a user stock portfolio or health records directly into the UI, and then create these UI components that are directly using their, information that they can interact with. They can buy more stocks. They can, you can perform an analysis on their portfolio, etc. Right? This type of technology with the RAG allows you to pull that information. You can leverage SingleStore DB. That's what I've done on some of these demos, and you can use it as a vector DB. And within the system, you can enable the swift retrieval of large and relevant data sets. And its capabilities allow for really efficient access of data needed by the RAG model to produce accurate and contextually relevant responses, which is a really critical component in maintaining the fidelity of these user interactions. And by enhancing a user's interface with RAG and generative UI, we kind of really significantly boost the user engagement. Interfaces not only become more reactive, but also more interactive based on their data sets, right? Interacts, it kind of integrates this content and responses in real time. And the data-driven personalization really, it kind of takes this content generation and this, Vercel, this kind of, this React component generation makes it a lot more tailored towards the user based on their database, based on their data taken from, SingleStore DB, any vector DB you can pull data from, and transforms how users interact with technology, and makes it a more of an extension of their intentions and needs. Okay, cool. Now we can get into a code walkthrough and demo. So let me share. I believe this screen is still shared. Okay, cool. So yeah, so there's many different ways you can interact with this, new Vercel technology. I just want to start off with this web interface that they've already built for you to kind of just try this out. And I would recommend everyone start off with this. This is a really great way to see how this technology works. So this website called v0.dev is, their way of, using this technology on the web. And essentially what you can do is you can type in any UI element that you want, and then it will kind of generate that UI element and give you the code for it. And you can integrate that code directly into your technology, into your code base, stuff like that. So let's try an example here. So a login page for my website. And what it's doing here is it's using their, AI SDK to generate this logging page. And you can use this login page directly in your website. And the great thing about it is, you can do this with ChatGPT. You can do this with these other technologies. You can say, prompt ChatGPT to give me the code for this type of logging page. But if you've ever tried that, it's going to be it's not going to look great. It's not going to look great at all. You can't really, customize the theme. You can change the font. You can change the radius. You can change the colors. You can also get the code directly here, which actually integrates directly with your Next.js app or your React application. It's simply just React code that they're giving you, and you can get the styles as CSS. You can customize it as much as you want. You get the layout.jsx, and this is really, really useful for generating AI generated React components on the fly. If you something as simple as a login page, right? You don't really need to generate that. There's been many examples of this being done, and you can actually kind of really customize it towards your specific application with this type of technology. Another example here is like I want a documentation page for my API, right? Something as simple as that. And I can do a side-by-side comparison of what this actually kind of looks like with ChatGPT in a minute. ChatGPT is not very great. As you should also try it yourselves and try this website out, v0.dev, after this presentation. It's a really good way of kind of exploring this API, this AI technology by Vercel. But here, this is a really cool API documentation page. Really, you can see overview, authentication, endpoints, post, comments. You can add new sections here. You can access the code directly, see the components, see the styles, and see the layout. And obviously you can customize it. You can see what it looks like on a tablet, on a phone. And yeah, you can, and also it generates like multiple versions of it. So if you don't like the first version it generates, you can see the second version. And also, yeah, you can see there's 3 different versions, and you can pick whichever like. You can do a new generation. And if anyone has like any prompts they want me to put in here just for a demo, let me know. I can do that before the end of the demo. If you want to see that, just put it in the chat. But yeah, I can also show you, how this kind of directly integrates into your code. So this is kind of how you can, use V0 and the Vercel AI SDK to generate these React components that can be directly integrated in your code. But what about like the chatbot technology I was kind of talking about earlier, right? So let me open up a code base. Hopefully, I'm not really sure what you guys can see. Let me just do a new screen share. Okay. Hopefully you should be able to see this code now. I'll make it a little bit bigger. Yeah. Okay, so basically this is where you can see, this is a code base that has been shared in the GitHub with all of you guys. And essentially how this is laid out here, and close this for just a minute. So essentially what we have is we have these components that have been generated. You can use these. For this example here, we're using a stock analysis and stock buying type chatbot where, once a user says, hey, I want to learn about X stock, it'll return like a UI element that has all the information about the X stock. If they want to buy it, they can, click on that stock and say buy X amount of shares. That's kind of the demo that we have here. And so we have these pre-generated components that, you can use these. You can use V0 to generate this. You can use anything else, or you can write these components yourself. But these are very general components, right? For example, here we can see, a stock purchase component. It's very simple and it just has like basic properties. Some simple HTML here that essentially, kind of shows how this is being made. But yeah, so these are like the general stock components. And then, within the UI, you can see some other components here as well. And then, yeah, so all this is put together and uses kind of like the technology I was talking about earlier of, the AI state and the UI state to kind of integrate the LLM technologies. Use basically say, I want X amount of stock for this price, and it gets all the information from that. Maybe it does retrieval augmented generation, uses SingleStore, and then, gets all this information real time. And then let's see a demo of this working. And you can all try this demo as well on the GitHub link, right? So essentially, let's see like this example here. Like, what is the price of Dogecoin right now? And essentially what it's going to do is it's going to generate this React component. And this React component is, we have this predefined in our code base, but with all this, this graph here, this is very, and obviously this is not real data. We haven't looked this up with the real database, but it's pretty easy to do. You can just integrate it directly with any real-time stock portfolio analysis or any of these stock portfolio or stock, or cryptocurrency APIs that have real-time data about the stocks. But essentially here, right, we have this graph, right? And this graph is very customized towards a specific data. And you can't really do that unless you have this pre-generated, React component. But what really happens here is you take the AI state and the UI state and directly integrate what this technology directly integrate this data directly into this React component. So then when you, respond to the user, it's not just like a text saying, is that 3 cents or stuff like that. It's actually saying that, is actually a more, very interactive component. You can actually even click on it and see, prices of current stocks. And you can say, give me news about this, and it'll create some more components here where, you can click on this, you can see direct news articles, and you can see like how this is powerful here, right? You can say, tell me about Tesla stock, and it'll, take this technology, generate a similar UI component, and instead of just saying, $1,200, it'll give you this whole graph that's directly integrated with your UI component, pulling the data from GPT or any other data source you have. And you can say, buy 8 stocks. And see, this is another UI component that, is kind of pre-generated, but has all this data directly integrated into it. So you can use it really interactively with your users, right? So you can say, you want maybe, 578 shares, you can click purchase, and there you go, successfully purchased. And this is another UI component that is automatically generated. And so, this is really the case here, right? This is kind of like the proposal. It's really about having these interactive components that you can directly interact with instead of just having like a chatbot that most of these other technologies have, like ChatGPT. That's really the value they're gaining here. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, we can get into that now.
Ayush, I had a question. So
Yeah.
can you ask it to generate like a connection to a database? So if would it be able to give you a basic outline, and could you customize that for a specific technology? For example, if you wanted to connect to SingleStore.
Yeah, you can definitely connect to SingleStore, and you can create your own React components that, kind of display the information, and then use SingleStore to, pull in all the information from your tables, stuff like that. You can actually the really great thing about this is you can create any of your own UI components. directly within React. And you can create these buttons. You can create this. This is just a quick example with stocks specifically. But yeah, if you wanted to do it with a database to visualize a database instead of just getting a text response, that's something we really useful. Exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Ayush. This was really nice and very informative. We will actually start with the Q&A session. Apologies in advance as we have way more questions than we can answer live, but our team will definitely follow up with each of you via email afterwards. So please keep the questions coming. Just a reminder that the Q&A function is in the lower right corner of your Zoom console.
Yep. Ayush, I think there's a question there from Carlos. He
Yeah.
says how to integrate Vercel with Git for consistency between source code and deployment. So that's a kind of good point. I guess part of the overall development cycle, you will want to do that. So I'm assuming that's documented somewhere.
Yeah,
in there.
yeah. So you can actually, I just wanted to demonstrate, it's a very seamless process to integrate that. So I can just demonstrate that really quickly. So just get to okay. I just want to get to, yeah. So you can see this application that I have on GitHub right here, and it's actually directly integrated with Vercel. And as you can see, I have this right here. You can open it up. You can see your production deployment. Every time you make like a Git commit or something like that, or sorry about that. This thing, yeah. If you make a Git commitment, you can actually take this Git commit, and every time you make this commit and push to your repo, it'll update the production deployment directly with Vercel. So this is a really great way of using consistency between Vercel and Git, and then obviously Vercel is a really great way to host it. So you can actually see it's hosted on this Vercel app right here. So that's a great thing about Vercel. It's super easy to integrate directly with your Git repo. You just need to integrate your Git repo account here, and you can do instant rollback, runtime logs, build logs, and you can see all your branches, stuff like that. It's a great way to directly integrate your production environment right on the Vercel console.
This is super cool, Ayush. I'm so glad you showed. I've gotten kind of distracted by the v0.dev. I had never seen that before, and so I'm over here like playing with it. And I'm trying to figure out, I've built like a couple dashboards while you've been talking, like weather dashboards and whatnot. But I guess my question is, how did you go, and maybe you showed this earlier, so sorry if that's the case, but how did you go from like brainstorming, I guess, UI dashboards or concepts to production? Is there like a one click where you can say like, this is the design I want, I like it now, so publish? Or how does that work?
So are you talking specifically with the v0 components or
Exactly. Yeah.
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 Yeah, so you can take whatever ideas that you have, right? Like this is kind of the workflow that v0 provides you. You can say, you want X, Y, and Z, and then you say, let's say like a login page for simplicity, right? And then it generates whichever login page. There's 3 different examples here. And then once they generate that, you can take the code that it gives you. And it's going to give you these component.jsx, styles.css, and layout.jsx. And essentially, you can take that code and then integrate it directly into your Vercel, your Next.js or React app, and you can customize it directly to what you need. Obviously, you'll need some more client-side things to make it work on the back end. This is just going to be your front-end technology, kind of showing. This is all the login functionality with whatever service provider you're using. You need to integrate that on the back end, but yeah, you can actually just plug and play directly with the UI. Which is really great because UI development, it'll speed that up a lot, in a lot of cases here.
Got it. So it's like it'll give you all the code and you can copy and paste it, but
Yeah.
ultimately they're two different tools. I thought maybe there was like a one click.
No, unfortunately, yeah. So the only thing that they have available within the SDK right now is this chatbot interface where you can actually, create your own Vercel, or you can create your own React components. For example, you want like these stock components, and then instead of talking directly with a chatbot, it's going to be you can talk with these React components that you can directly integrate with. Unfortunately, yeah, this v0 technology is just currently you know, on a website. But I hope that, I'm assuming like that'll soon be rolled out into the SDK. It'll be a really cool feature once it is, because then like all these, you know, you can generate these on the spot and then directly integrate into your code base, and that would be really cool.
It's really, really cool. Yeah. Akmal, I don't know if you can think of any like cool use cases that this could be used for, but this like super exciting for me. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I kind of saying along the same lines as yourself, Matt. Be great, you know, if you essentially can design your application, the workflow, and all the connectivity, and then just click a button and it generates everything for you. There's no need for you to do the copy and pasting, right? The platform, the SDK will manage that for you. Maybe we are a few steps away from that yet. But certainly, you know, being able to generate the UI component is quite nice. I think often, you know, as they say, you know, a picture is worth 1,000 words kind of thing, that the graphical elements sometimes can be the hardest to build. And then you've got, as Ayush was showing, you've got a couple of options. So it's a bit like ChatGPT, where it gives you an answer and then you can look at alternative answers. You know, it gives you that ability to decide which one you actually like and which is relevant or closest to what perhaps you're looking for. So, but yeah, very interesting sort of technology. So we're kind of moving along, isn't it, to the point where I think that the automatic code generation, essentially you describe to the system what it is you want, click a button, and it will generate everything for you. So, how's that for building an app?
It seems like really great. And obviously, like I've used like GPT to try this type of technology before, like ChatGPT, like, hey, like generate me a login screen, right? I don't know if you ever tried taking that code and, you know, putting it into your code base, and always looks very, very ugly. Not very great. And this seems like a very step above that. Seems like Vercel has done a really great job integrating. They have like their Next.js platform, so it seems like they can integrate directly into that, and seems they've done a really good job making these components look a little bit better, more production grade. So.
Yeah.
I see
a couple of questions there, Ayesha. So Adriano is asking, as a product designer, how can I benefit from this tool?
Yeah, as a product designer, I see like many different use cases, right? As a product designer, you're doing, you know, UI, UX development, and you're doing, you know, directly integrating that into your, you know, code bases. And I see this as like at least a starting point, right? Maybe this is not exactly what you need for your type of, application. Maybe your color scheme doesn't mainly line up with this. Maybe your, you know, font scheme doesn't line up with this. But this can be a really great starting point for, you know, creating a basic, you know, sign-in component, like a documentation, stuff like that. Obviously, the great thing is that they give you the code so you can, you know, integrate it directly into your platform and then customize it as much as you want. And that's the really great thing about this. And yeah, I think that's like, it can be really useful for product designers.
Cool.
Awesome. Akmal, I'm curious, you know, I know SingleStore, the old tagline was world's fastest database. And I think even today we talk about real-time AI and you know, real-time analytics as well. So this Carlos question was interesting to me. How can we use Vercel to achieve speed and performance with high-speed applications? And I wonder if this is, you know, Vercel maybe is just a piece of that puzzle, but I wonder if you have any thoughts on how to answer that.
Yeah, I think my thoughts are that you know, the backend sort of capabilities, you do need to have some sort of expertise and skill and knowledge. I mean, typically within an organization, you will have a database administrator. Often you've got competing demands as well within a large organization. You know, people want building multiple applications to interact with that database system. So it's a kind of a balancing act to achieve the best performance. And then, you know, judicious use of things like indexing, for example, choosing the best access algorithms, how to divide up your data, particularly relevant for a distributed database system. You know, what's the best scheme that you would use in order to achieve that, and so on, you know, and physical accelerators. and so on. And I think that having a responsive backend is important. Obviously, the front end is important as well. There's no point in asking a query and you're waiting a long time for the results to render. And given that the volume of data that we can now send to these LLMs as well, I think you've got your 1 million sort of presentation coming up soon. It's in your calendar. Matt, that'll be interesting to see. I mean, the mind boggles, in terms of how to deal with that quantity of data then. So lots of things to think about, I think. Many challenges that I think I see. But certainly as far as SingleStore is concerned, I mean, as you know, we've been around for a long time. So a lot of the back-end stuff, certainly in the optimization, the tuning, those aspects are well covered anyway, well understood techniques. And as I said, I mean, the DBA he or she will do a good job on that one.
Good stuff. Yukti, what do you think? Are we about at time for the raffle winner? Do you want to wrap things
Yes.
up?
Absolutely. That sounds good. Thank you so much, Ayush, for the wonderful presentation. I've also put the reminder for our upcoming sessions. Please feel free to check them out and RSVP right now. I'm hoping to see you all there. Big thank you for all the attendees for joining the webinar today. And the announcement that you've been waiting for. Today's raffle winner goes to Jagdish Subramoniam. He is the Senior Technology Architect at Cognizant. Congrats and thanks for joining. And if that's not you, please don't give up. We are going to announce one more AirPods winner and Meta Ray-Bans winner at the end of the day for anyone who has tried out today's demo. Sign up at the link that I will be posting in the chat just now and be eligible and just be entered to win. Thank you so much for everyone. And I hope you have a great rest of the day and have a nice week. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.